Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I want to welcome you to this event in our Cyrebro webinar series. Today, we're joined by Ori Arbel, the CTO of Cyrebro, and Yossi Sassi, who, among many things, is the co-founder of Tenroot. Today, they're going to lead us through a number of ways that you can harden your security posture by maximizing your current security tools and systems. First, I want to run through a few housekeeping points. So as many of you know, this webinar is interactive and we welcome your questions. You can submit questions using the tab below at any point throughout the webinar. We'll do our best to answer as many as possible at the end of the discussion. Next, we want to hear from you, so your feedback is welcome. Please use the tab below called Rate This, and you can leave your comments. If the presentation freezes at any time, just refresh your browser and it should go properly. And lastly, you can find more information and materials in the attachments tabs below, including today's slide presentation and more info related to today's topic. So now I'd like to introduce our presenters. We have Ori Arbel, who I mentioned is the CTO at Cyrebro. Ori comes from a strong technical cybersecurity background with years of operating and managing global monitoring and investigation teams. He brings an in-depth working knowledge of cutting-edge cybersecurity platforms and innovative technologies. He was formerly head of the QA and software implementation team at HP Israel, and Ori has been a part of the Cyrebro team since 2015, leading its technology and innovation. Next, joining us today is Yossi Sassi, InfoSec researcher, seasoned hacker, and chief security architect at Tenroot Cybersecurity. For over 30 years, Yossi has accumulated extensive experience in InfoSec, adversary simulations, red-blue teams training, conducting internal IT investigations, DFIR, and much more. He worked for Microsoft for 8 years as the technology group manager and has coded tools for Windows Server. Ori speaks at TED and TEDx events, international security conferences, and gives Fortune 500 keynote talks around the world. So thank you both for joining us today. Here is today's agenda. You can take a look. After discussing each topic, you see here in front of you, we're going to have time for a Q&A session, as I mentioned. So don't forget to submit your questions throughout the webinar. All right, so now I will pass it over to you, Ori.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. The first topic we're going to be covering today is essentially understanding and defining your risk. What are your assets and what needs to be protected? That's the main topic. Yossi is going to take us through a few of his thoughts around that.
Yeah, sure, gladly. So hi, everyone. Speaking about where you're at regarding your security needs, that's really important. As natural and common as it may sound, many businesses just tend to follow the trend or run after the current vulnerability and not stop for a second and think about what are my assets, what is my critical data, what is relevant to my vertical, because to be honest, the attacks can be either targeted, which is very personal, and there is very little to do about that, even for mature and cyber resilient organizations, not to mention small medium enterprises. But for the majority of it, statistically, they are spraying attacks, spraying in terms of it's not personal, right? You got it because you have an IP address and you're connected to the internet, or you're reading emails. And largely they can be affected by the industry or the vertical you're at, or either by regulations and things like that. So first of all, just understand where you're at on in terms of who are your common or immediate threat actors. Is it nation state? Are you a subcontractor of the defense sector? Are you a law firm? Will you be more hurt by availability, a lack on your availability, business conduct, like essentially ransomware and things like that? Or will you be more, is it more relevant for you to protect personal information, PIIs, meaning GDPR, potentially related consequences, etc. So really determining the assets and what you need to protect and the attack surface is something critical to begin with, I'd say.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think those are excellent points. If I may summarize them, it might sound funny, but it's super basic. If you're going to protect something, right, like Yossi said, understand what it is that you're protecting. In today's world, doesn't matter how big or small you are or what industry you're at, there are many assets. The attack surface is enormous. You have servers and endpoints, and you're in the cloud, and you're there, and you're here, and you have businesses, and you have different branches, and endless opportunities for you to get hurt. So understanding what are those assets that you're trying to protect is the first and most important phase in order to then take the necessary actions in order to protect it. So know your asset, focus on what are your most critical assets, and then what kind of resources do you need in order to protect them. And then finally, once you understand that and you do this, then, all right, say, what are the threats that are out there that I need to protect myself against? I think you do that, and you're at a very good place that I'd say 80% just neglect, or not truly neglect, but don't put enough focus on, and do it kind of quickly and run through time to market and all that. Need to run. That's awesome. But then the end result would look like that. Like you've done it quickly and you ran, and then you have huge gaps everywhere in your security and your assets are completely exposed. Not a good place to be, not where you want to be. Right? Yep. I think that would be summarizing point number one.
Indeed.
The second topic we're going to be talking about is the less is more kind of philosophy, the crawl, walk, run kind of a method, and understanding what your security tools are doing for you. Yossi, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, sure. So here I'd say probably one of the biggest blocks in making progress and moving forward with cybersecurity, dealing with cybersecurity, especially for small, medium enterprises, is the manpower, the tools, and what can be done there. And it's very easy to overwhelm ourselves, with a bunch of free tools out there. You can get lost in GitHub, or just download a bunch of stuff from every article you read. But really, again, we should come back to the basics. There is a lot to gain from doing more with less, meaning really utilizing and making the best of the operating system itself, the built-in tools and capabilities and features and central management coming with your environment in the platform. So things like group policies can really help tighten and enforce, firewall capabilities and blocking known threats, as well as working with even the built-in endpoint protection. Sometimes can be in some scenarios quite sufficient. And when we think about risk factors, we need to remember that it's right, like the presentation, PPT, people, process, technologies. So people are scarce in capabilities and knowledge and quantity. Technologies are vast, and there are things to do with them, such as updates, patching, handling end of life, etc. But also, we when we look at processes, you can gain a lot from good processes. Just day-to-day mundane processes with the supply chain and with new employees, or when an employee leaves the company. Those things, the processes, don't require you to be a cybersecurity expert, but they can vastly improve or maybe make your cybersecurity posture go down if you don't take them into account. And we do a bunch of incident response, DFIR incidents, And there we can see really people are being breached by those basics, you know, the kind of things living off the land, as I mentioned. So before you run to the advanced attacks, just make sure you can do the most with what you're already given.
Again, couldn't said it better myself. I could give you, just like Yossi gave a few examples, I could think of a million examples of people running and investing in a new shiny thing in the market, not fully understanding what for or how it helps you. And I think going back all the way down to the basic, and you see here on the screen, and it says, you know, stuff that all of you heard and probably know, and most of it is free. I mean, two-factor authentication, it's built in almost everywhere now. Granted, you need to enable it. Most of the systems that you'll encounter today would have it built in, but turned off. So you'd have to go in and manually enforce it. But it doesn't cost you any money. It takes 30 seconds and your security goes through the roof just by enabling the two-factor authentication. Backups with ransomware, you know, going wild today. Backup. Make sure that, going back to the first topic that we had, understanding what are your critical assets, make sure that they're backed up. Doesn't mean that you need to back up everything. Doesn't mean that you need to back up every day, every hour, but understand where your critical assets are. Make sure that they're backed up sufficiently that you can then, based on your risk and your operational method, that you can continue if you get hit with a ransomware, let's say. Update patches, you know, kind of basic, everybody knows that. And then finally, I think security awareness for people. You can have the fanciest, shiniest, newest tool that covers everything. At the end of the day, there's a person sitting there. Not everybody, like Yossi said, not everybody's a cybersecurity expert. Not everybody is a tech savvy person at all. You can be a lawyer, you know nothing about security, but you have the power to destroy everything. At the end of the day, you're part of the network. You sit there, you get an email, says, you know, so-and-so, you click on it, boom, the entire network is infected. So educate the user on what to do, what not to do, how to report it. Again, processes, procedures. If nobody reports a phishing email, it doesn't matter how fancy your tool is, nobody reported it. It's going to go undetected for years. Build the processes, have a thought process behind it. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Implement it, then buy the tool. I think those are the basics that we can all use and imprint in our brain when we approach buying a new tool.
Yep, right on.
Direct relation, topic number 3. I think topic number 3 will talk about understanding your security posture. Lots of tools, like we said, lots of systems, lots of moving parts. How do they all work together? Well, what do we do with them?
Right.
What is your take on it, Yossi?
Yeah, so this is, like you said, this is a direct continuation to the previous topic, right? When it comes to doing more with less, so not only the manpower, but also the tools you have or you're given. Sometimes maybe you're inheriting them from somebody inside the organization, or the previous IT person, or the previous managed service provider that left something there, etc. So just pay attention to make sure the tools work for the person, not the person working for the tools. And in that sense, it's really trying to make the tool you have really fit to your needs. So either if you have duplications, sometimes maybe 2 different tools that do reporting about things happening in your environment, so consider to consolidate or remove one of them. If you have tools that are just creating too much noise, maybe false positives, and rather distracting you from your day-to-day rather than focusing you on what's really meaningful. Try to keep things that are essentially as you see them. They fit your routine. They have higher efficiency for what you're doing on your day-to-day routine in cybersecurity, and have essentially high fidelity alerts. You want to go after the things that really surface the things that matter most on your routine, rather than overwhelming you yet again with signals or systems you're not doing much with.
No, absolutely. I think to touch on the previous point and kind of tie it together, like you said, there are lots of tools, there are lots of moving pieces, and some you may just happen to work with, and it's not your decision. Management bought it, or the previous person, like you said. Making the tools work for you and not the other way around, that's the key. I can't even express the amount of times and places I've been where I've come across systems that are there. Nobody knows how to operate them. Nobody knows what they do. Nobody knows how to configure them. False positives up through the roof. Every little thing that you need, they need to contact the vendor for. And there's a ticket, and then it takes weeks, and those weeks go by and false positives keep coming.
Right.
Turnkey solution is awesome. It's still your responsibility to make sure that it fits your personal need. It's key turn solution for the industry. It's never going to fit your need 100%. It's never going to be, okay, next, perfect, running for years. That's not realistic. It's not how those tools work. You need to, again, processes and procedures. You need to understand, you need to make the processes, you need to make the procedure, you need to understand what the tool is for. And is it giving you the right kind of value? And if not, is there a different tool that you may have or may do a better job? Go ahead, again, with the thought process behind it. Research, investigate, understand, have the right KPIs in place, make sure that it checks all the boxes. And when it does, make sure that your people are trained. The people, the teams that are going to touch the day-to-day basics of the systems, whether from the administrative side of configuring and making sure that the system runs, or whether from the output of it. Make sure that you understand. If you have an endpoint protection that says so-and-so happens, and the person that reads it doesn't understand the internal mechanisms of the endpoint protection, he's not gonna be able to make much of it. He doesn't understand the output of the system, let alone fixing it. Then, super important aspect of making sure that the tools work for you. I think that's pretty much it.
Yep.
And then topic number 4, once we've done all those things and we've gone through the 3 previous topics, and we have the system, and we chose the right one, and we know how to work with it, what do we do with it? Again, it's a jungle out there. You have 5 different teams, 20 different systems. How do they all work together? How do you make it into a band rather than just different instruments? What would you say to that, Yossi?
I would say that for this final topic, the how we come and approach a centralized vision and to consolidate on the things we've said. So we need to take into account those really 3 main challenges. So the entire industry is really aligning to understand how to solve this. And one of the is really the lack of knowledge and proper manpower when it comes to skill set, mindset, and tool set. Those 3 are various fields that all have to do with the professional knowledge needed to perform ongoing cybersecurity related tasks, and that's a huge challenge. And the numbers are showing that this gap just keeps staying very evident and even gets larger. The second big challenge is really the sophistication, if not really the sheer amount of and volume of attacks daily, sometimes even hourly. So the sophistication of attackers is getting more and more clear, and sometimes people, when they read the news and the updates, they think, you know, the industry is coming up and innovating with innovative solutions. That's not true. The forces that are running innovation in cybersecurity are the cyber criminals, are the attackers. They're the ones that are innovating. The cybersecurity defense control, cybersecurity industry is just running behind them and trying to keep up with the pace. So we need to keep up, to keep in mind who is running innovation really behind the scenes. And finally, the gaps in visibility. There are systems like Ori mentioned on the endpoint and the network itself or the perimeter. And you may cover one part of it, or just the workstations, the servers, or just have a firewall log and nothing in the endpoint. But essentially, that leaves you with gaps in visibility. That will make it very hard to have a centralized view of the organization and to correlate events. So that's my key take about that.
That's I think that's a very good point with who's innovating this market. Just like anything else, at the end of the day, security is, as I see it, is the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper doesn't dictate the game. He's just there trying to stop goals from coming in. And that is cybersecurity defense and monitoring is exactly that. New kinds of attacks come in. We need to find a way, whether through technology or through processes and procedures, to handle them. And one of the best ways is to create a bigger picture, a centralized vision. People call it an attack story these days. An attack is not a single event. So if you collect logs, there are lots of single events that may support, and if you put them in the right order, if you use the right tools, and if you have a bigger picture behind it, then you can build the attack story that actually took place, which is the attack lifecycle. Then you have a better chance of responding quicker, mitigating it better, and making sure that this gap is neutralized for the next kind of next phase of the attack. So collecting all the right logs is essential. Understanding what logs and what technology is there to collect all those logs is a key factor. Understanding how to make sense of all those logs. We're talking about billions of logs, right, from multiple different systems. How do you make an attack story out of it? How do you understand that phase 1 happened, then phase 2, then phase 3? Again, very, very important. Need to make sure that you have the right processes and procedures. And I know I said it a million times, but that's my point. Repetition, repetition, repetition. People tend to overlook this and say, yeah, processes, procedures, I got it. I'm just going to buy a tool that does that for me. Not the case, sadly. Then me and Yossi will be completely out of business.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing in the kind of vision of the big picture that everybody's talking about today is automating it. Again, we talked about billions of logs, multiple systems, multiple teams. You do want to automate some of the processes, some of the phases. But again, going back to the first point, crawl, walk, run, understand what you're automating. Don't run and automate stuff that you don't understand. That's going to create more damage than any good. If you automate stuff that you don't understand fully, you're going to lose visibility, and you're not going to know who's who and where what's going on. Think of what you automate. Start small, and slowly build the automation up to a place where you feel comfortable and it's actually helping you rather than kicking you in the back.
Definitely.
That's the.
I think I think with that said, we might have some time left for a couple of questions, perhaps.
Yeah, gladly.
Yeah, so thanks, Ori and Yossi. Like Yossi said, we're going to turn to some questions from the audience. We're going to try to get through as many as possible, but if we don't have time to get through, get to everyone, we're going to follow up directly with you with an answer via email. So our first question is, how can I determine my security risk? Is there like a methodology or a list or some sort of structure that I can follow?
Yeah, sure. So I can pick up this one. When it comes to having this to understand a methodology or a list you can follow. Sure, there are a bunch of lists and a bunch of best practices out there, either from government and know-how organizations, whether National Institute of Standards and Technologies, the NIST, or CISA, etc. But the short answer was really given, I think, earlier here today when Ori and I discussed. Really, if you're looking for procedures or structures, the basic ones, really the basics, if you do them well, will keep you, like the Pareto rule, 80-20% stuff of focus will keep you quite healthy, which is the backups. When I say backups, it's encrypted backups. One way, you cannot access them from the network, keep them offline, etc., etc. Updates are not just Windows updates, but updates to devices, whether it's ADSL routers or applications. You're used that your browser is updating automatically, etc. But you should keep in mind there are other devices in your network, security cameras, etc., that are not updated automatically or not that frequently or not that evidently that they need an update. So there are a bunch of sites after you mapped your devices and operating system and applications. You can read about those systems, like CVE databases, cvedetails.com, etc., and look for the vendor latest updates. Sometimes updates means replacing a piece of equipment or upgrading a piece of software because it's end of life. Simply the vendor has exhausted this piece of equipment, just exhausted its lifespan, and you need to replace that. And there are no patches available for that at all. So backups, updates, we spoke about the human factor, not clicking, being aware of sense of urgency in messages, emails, SMS, texts, etc. And two-factor. I think 2FA cannot be stressed enough as really one of the main ROIs, the biggest return on investment of enabling two-factor authentication everywhere in your life. Whether it's your Gmail, Dropbox, Instagram, whatever, Twitter, whatever you're using, start in your daily life and extend to the organizational, the work space life. When you access from VPN, as a remote worker, a mobile worker from home, when you access internal resources, when you RDP into servers as an IT person or support personnel. So really those can give you a kind of a quick set of rules to reflect upon, and if you do that properly, I think that will probably minimize your security risk right there in some good amount.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And internet is a beautiful thing. It's all out there. Again, the data is yours. The organization and assets are yours. If you've gone through the 4 steps that we just talked about, then it's just taken this and it's a copy paste to a framework that somebody already made up. I mean, there's tons and tons of frameworks out there. Just copy and paste your 4 points into the framework, and there you have it. The answer is right there.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Let's get to another question. So this one says, if I only have one IT personnel or individual in my organization, how can I handle cybersecurity risks without more kind of dedicated manpower for this? What do you recommend I do?
Well,
yeah,
yeah, sure. If I can touch on that as well, I think here we discussed it a bit previously about focusing the tools and the efforts. But to be honest, really, there is a lot to wrap your head around when it comes to touching on all cybersecurity related aspects, and with the scarce personnel, etc. So I would say just consider a managed security service provider, an MSSP, that can really take care of those for you, especially when it comes to the visibility gaps. We've touched on the challenges. You know, you can get trained, you can find even free courses online, etc. You can buy tools sometimes to the limit of your budget, but all those latest and greatest tools are hard to evaluate, purchase, install, configure, and maintain and update on the ongoingly. And that's something really challenging. So I think especially for small, medium enterprise, to consider the help of others, somebody that has invested in such a platform and has been doing that, been there, done that, doing it every day to a bunch of customers, that really makes sense on that topic.
Yeah, I think I'll even be more blunt than that. And I'll go ahead and I'll say that if resources are scarce and you have one IT person, like the question said, then of course there's online training and courses, and you can make that one person more professional. But cybersecurity, I think it's safe to say we're towards the end of 2021, cybersecurity is a profession by itself. And having your current IT or current network person double up as a cybersecurity expert is doing him a disservice, doing the organization a disservice. It's a profession just like anything else. And if you don't have it in-house, or if you don't have enough of it in-house, just like Yossi said, it's not a shame to go out and get professional services. You do that every day with lots of other things, right? You didn't say, oh, am I going to build my firewall from scratch, or am I going to go buy a service that's already out there?
Yeah.
It's apparent that it's a profession, and if you don't have it in-house, go ahead and look for it elsewhere. That's perfectly fine. I think it's the short answer.
Okay, thanks, Ori and Yossi. So I think we have another question that I imagine is a lot of audience members have. So this question starts, I have a small business. What are the must-have tools for an SMB like me?
I'll go ahead and I'll take it. Yossi, you can jump in if you want, if you have a disagreement or something to add. I think it varies, and there's no magic pill. It depends on what business you run, what sector you're in, and how your organization looks like from a topology standpoint. I think safe to say that without knowing the answer to anything that I just said, I think endpoint is something that everybody has. Doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in the cloud, if you're on-prem, if you're big, small, whatever, distributed deployment or not. Endpoint is something that everybody has. I think everybody needs to invest in a good endpoint visibility. Doesn't necessarily need to be automated protection and mitigation, but endpoint visibility is key as far as I'm concerned. I think that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, nothing to add. I mean, that's perfectly good.
Okay, great. So you sort of touched on it before, actually. And so the final question that we have time for says, all my information systems are in the cloud. We don't use servers. Aren't I protected? Doesn't my cloud service provider already handle security for me?
The short answer is absolutely not. I think the first rule when you learn about the cloud is that the cloud is responsible for the cloud, meaning without name dropping, but everybody knows the cloud services, AWS, Azure, Google, GCP, what have you. They're responsible for the cloud, for the security of the infrastructure in the cloud. The content, anything that's in there, anything that you spin up on the cloud itself is completely yours, and the vendor has absolutely zero responsibility towards that. So are you protected if you're just in a cloud? Absolutely not. You will need to modify your security group. You'll need to make sure that security standards are addressed. I mean, just like you would in the on-prem classic environment, in the cloud is pretty much the same thing. Same concerns, same 4 topics that we talked about fit exactly the same. The tools may be different because if you're running Kubernetes or not, or this or that, depending how your layout within the cloud sits, you may need different tools, but pretty much the same thing like on-prem. You'll need to understand, map your assets, protect them, get the right tools, get the right people, processes, procedures. 20th time we talked about it. Hopefully it sinks in.
Yeah, definitely. I can just add in one sentence, perhaps. Obviously, the cloud is yet another computing system just waiting to be hacked, and any organization or any platform in the world can be hacked given motivation and time, and it's important to realize that there are hacks into cloud environments all the time, and that's why you have to keep focused really on narrowing the gaps by getting help from other people's knowledge and know-how and expertise, and narrowing those gaps that we've discussed here, and remember that there are, like I think Ori also mentioned, there are no silver bullets there, just best practices and experience, and trying to narrow down and focusing on what's important for you.
I think we talked about, and we're saying, I'm in the cloud, I'm more secure. I'm thinking the other way around. Yossi brought a good point in the first question he answered, and he talked about a CVE bank. Everything that's on-prem, everything that's traditional, that's been so far, they're CVE banks, they're huge. They're out there. Most of them, if not all of them, are free. And people can enjoy that and use that for their advantage. When it comes to cloud, because it's rather new in this world, it's even harder to protect sometimes because those CVE banks don't exist, and if they do, they're pretty new and they're not tested fully, and it's a faster paced world within the cloud. So quite the opposite, I would say. If I'm in the cloud, am I naturally protected? I said naturally not is the answer from my standpoint.
Okay, it's great. So unfortunately, that's the time we have for questions. If we didn't get to your question, like I mentioned, we will reach out directly with a response for you via email. So I want to thank everyone for attending today. I'd like to thank, obviously, Ori and Yossi for all of your insights and knowledge. It was very appreciated. And I want everyone to be on the lookout for our next webinar. So thank you for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.